Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode, another live stream of Geek Homeworld. And we are here on YouTube, live streaming here. I apologize. We were going to start an hour ago, but my computer just decided it was going to do what it was going to do. And joining me once again here is Cheryl. Welcome back. If you know Cheryl, her on Twitter, you're at Palace Princess.
Yep.
And Cheryl is a big Loki fan.
Yes.
And
I don't care what he does. I'm happy.
Yeah,
as long as he's doing something.
As long as he's doing something, that's awesome. The there we go. I just want to make sure that that's working. So we're on Twitter, Geek Homeworld, Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. If you would subscribe to the channel, that would be fantastic. Give us a thumbs up on the video. I do apologize for the live stream being late. You know, it's just computer glitches and things. I don't know. Maybe it was the announcement of Windows 11 today, so my Windows 10 device decided not to work. I don't know.
Just your computer.
It's just my computer. It's a good computer. It's a real good computer, but I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to talk about a couple things here. We're going to talk about Loki, and this will be spoiler filled. I think there's a pinned comment here, or it was. Maybe it's not, but the pinned comment that I had to the stream here is that this will be spoiler filled. We're going to be talking about Loki, episode 3, Lamentis,
yes.
I believe is the name of it, and how it moves the story forward. We're also going to talk about Fast and Furious 9, or F9 or whatever.
The royalty is going to talk about F9 because that's just you.
That's probably just me. You're just here for the Loki, and
I'm only here for the Loki.
You're only here for the Loki, and I was going to talk some Star Wars. If some other people show up here live on the stream, we'll talk about it. If not, oh well. Be it as it may, this is the Loki episode. So, what were your thoughts, Cheryl, about the episode?
Well, overall, it was really disappointing because it was so short. So
yeah,
when it ended, we were stunned. I mean, not just because of the way that the episode ended, but the fact that it had ended so very quickly. So, I definitely could use a lot more Loki content. I thought it was a fun episode. I thought it was a fine episode. There have been some criticisms out there about it. I think really my only criticism is, it was so nice having the interplay between Mobius and Loki in the first 2 episodes. So Owen Wilson's character and Tom Hiddleston. And we didn't get, all we got was that same little clip from the end of the previous episode where Owen Wilson tells him not to follow Lady Loki. And we did have it confirmed that she is Sylvie, although it's still not entirely clear exactly who she is and what she's doing and why she's doing it. But I think one thing is very clear from this episode, and that is that we cannot trust the TVA. We may indeed see the TVA, or at least elements of the TVA, maybe the Judge Ravonna Renslayer. Maybe they're actually the bad guys. I don't think that's surprising. But Loki is certainly continuing to learn more about what's going on. He learns from Sylvie in this episode that the TVA agents were not all just created directly by the timekeepers, but that they used to be human, and that they are now also variants. So what does that mean if there are literally thousands of variants?
Exactly. Where does that leave us?
Variations created beyond the and I asked you this question too. I said, they showed us, Mobius showed Loki in the first episode, all these different versions of Loki. Well, if there is not already a multiverse, we know there's a multiverse when Sylvie sets off the time bomb, but there has to have already been these variants, these multiverses, variations, if you will, because he showed him a lot of different Lokis. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Is there really just a sacred timeline and they're just stomping back all of these variations on the timeline? That's just not possible. Something else is going on here, and we are not seeing the whole picture. It's very sort of Wizard of Ozzy, maybe. What is the role that
possibly?
Even in episode, I guess it was maybe episode 2, when maybe it was 1. I can't remember. But anyway, when Mobius goes,
1 and 2 are similar in a way.
Right. When Mobius goes in, well, they're the same story. When Mobius goes into the judge's chambers and he asked to see the timekeepers, he's apparently never encountered them. She seems to have done so, or at least be in communication with them. But maybe that's not even true. Maybe they are entirely mythological. Maybe they don't exist at all. So it's all, I think what we get out of this episode is a whole lot more confusion, that we really don't know what's going on. And in the perils of the moment of being stuck on Lamentis, they don't really have too much time to think about it, although they do have time for Loki to get drunk and sing and dance. They have time for that. But in terms of what's going on with the story, we really have no idea. And we don't know either how they're going to get out of this predicament, because they have basically destroyed their only way out on a planet that no one survives.
Yeah, the thing that I'm wondering is, what if there is no sacred timeline? What if we're, being myopic and only, being shown this portion of the whole big picture, like you said, and maybe the universe is utter chaos. Maybe prime Loki, I guess you would call him, the Loki that we know, or this is the 2012 Loki, because Loki in 2023. This is
the Loki of Avengers.
Died. Right. This is the Avengers Loki, not the Endgame Loki. And it gives him a wonderful chance to redo his character and, change the outlook of, because he's seen where he dies at the hands of Thanos. So maybe this, maybe we'll see we'll find out that, this is all a charade, the Wizard of Oz analogy that you used, possibly. I don't know. I feel like there's something bigger. And my thoughts about the third episode, yes, it was shorter, and yes, it did leave on a good cliffhanger, but I hate I love cliffhangers and hate them at the same time. I could have used 5 or 10 more minutes. I wish they would have, spoiler alert, as we said earlier, I wish they would have got off that planet, and somebody said, it might have been you, that they think Loki might have picked up the times, or not the time stone.
No. It was we ran into some folks today. We had our own Comic-Con at a restaurant this afternoon.
Right.
And so it was one of my friends and colleagues who said that they thought he might have picked up a time stone, and that was going to be, I think what she was saying is that that's going to be the means of escape. Who knows? I mean, it could be that, he already shared with Mobius that Sylvie's been hiding in various apocalypses around the timeline. And so it may be that what's going on back at the TVA while we're watching this happen on Lamentis, that what's going on with Mobius and the others is they are popping into the other apocalypses and trying to find them. So it could be that Mobius comes and basically saves the day to get them off of Lamentis. Or somehow another Loki variant shows up. Who knows?
Because technically multiple Lokis could show up. An infinite amount of Lokis could show up from the
Infinite
multiverse.
Lokis, I like it.
Infinite Lokis. Yeah, that's a lot of hair product. Well, or not.
Well, but Sylvie's still insisting. She insists again for the second time, don't call me Loki. And also ask the question, what makes a Loki a Loki? And that's I think that's the central question right now. Well, it makes it look, because look how different she is as a Loki from him. Different skill sets, different genders, different histories. She always knew she was adopted, but she doesn't remember her mother. She doesn't really share much really about her own history. While, our Loki Prime is just waxing nostalgic about everything. He's just all out there.
I wonder if Loki has become a title, like maybe Thor is a title. The power of Thor, is going to be passed to Jane Foster in Love and Thunder somehow. And, I don't know. Maybe they're treating it like a title because maybe he really isn't Loki. Or I don't know. I don't know what to think.
Well, and she apparently has been fighting the TVA her whole life. She says, "What does that mean?" Since she was a child, was she, is the TVA creating this, or is the TVA suppressing this? Everything is just really unclear. I think the only thing we can know right now is that we can't know anything.
Maybe we're in the nightmare dimension or something, something with Doctor Strange. And maybe the Loki series is just in Loki's mind. I don't know. That's like too meta for me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we had with WandaVision, and again, I don't know anything about any of the comic book stuff except for what I read in the comments about these Disney Plus shows. You got Wanda's twins who are in the Young Avengers in the comics. You've got Sylvie now, who is Young Avengers in the comics. So, is all of this setting up to go to that? How is this setting up, if it is, for Doctor Strange, the multiverse of madness? Or is it not connected? How does this work in the grand MCU? Because it's all now canon, right? Even though we know the previous television shows are not canon.
No, they basically, the shows that were not that were canon before, they pretty much snuffed out, which is Agent Carter,
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Cage,
all of those Netflix shows. But this show, anything on Disney Plus, is canon. So
right,
this is
only
canon.
Now that Disney owns everything, only Disney counts.
Well, in a way, I mean, it is Disney Studios. So
I need to go get my ears, my Mickey ears, so we can bow to our overlords. Not that I mind.
Right.
Just keep feeding me Loki, and it's okay.
Yeah, all Loki all the time. But just Tom Hiddleston is just so good at that role, and you expect him to be mischievous, and it's good seeing him. I mean, I like the first two episodes were kind of a breakdown of Loki. They were trying to break him down to the fact that he's not mischievous at all. He's almost cruel and, power hungry. And he says, well, basically he already had the self-realization that he knows that he's inferior and he's projecting to be something of glorious purpose, like the first episode and all that, so that he can make others feel like make himself like above others when he's really not. He knows he's not. And but I think there's much more to the story than what we've seen. And if I'm correct, there's only 6 episodes and we're 3 in, so we're halfway there.
Right.
Which seems very short. I mean, if you think about the time for it, if we average 30-40 minutes, that's
it's going to be shorter than Endgame.
It's still everything will be shorter than Endgame, but it's when you think about it, like 30 to 40 minutes or so of a show on Disney Plus, they do get to flesh things out more. I don't think it worked as well for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think that I don't even know if that would have worked as a film. It would have had to been
well.
Really
I mean, they would have had to edit it for a film. Yeah, it was
right.
They drew out some things. It was like, this feels like the conclusion. Oh, but we need a couple more episodes, so we won't conclude it now. We'll just let him escape.
WandaVision was so engrossing though that it felt like they had the opportunity to do that because they were breaking some new ground. And I did hear a comparison of the first 2 episodes of WandaVision where they were, going through the sitcoms and all that. And the first two Loki episodes as being kind of similar, in a way. So
the setup.
And so maybe, we're getting into the third episode. Wanda started, awakening. People started realizing more things were going on than what it seemed like. And I think we're going to see more of that with Loki. And I think, there's talk whether Loki is, instead of, not just Spider-Man setting up Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and WandaVision setting that up, but it feels like maybe Loki might directly be affecting things because the MCU is wonderfully connected, that maybe he's going to cause some of the problems. It won't just be, Wanda's the villain of Doctor Strange, or she's just going after her kids. It's like, I feel like things are building, and these shows, Disney Plus shows, are good for that. And we have Black Widow. Black Widow is going to basically be a flashback. It's this happens. I mean, so technically Tony Stark could be in this.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we got to keep in mind that Black Widow was intended to be released before these shows aired.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be out over a year ago.
Exactly.
So in terms of, how is Loki? Well, and I think we have to be careful about expecting how these Disney Plus shows are feeding into the cinema universe for the films, because I think it's dangerous to set things up on the show and have that play out in the film, because not everyone who goes to the theater to see the movies is watching the Disney Plus shows. So
that's true. That's true.
I think the things that are happening in the Disney Plus television shows have to in some way still be separate from the films. It's kind of like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there were things happening in the movies that were impacting the show, but nothing in the show was reflected in the cinema.
I agree, but I feel like that it's a little, Loki's a little of both. It has to connect to the universe, but also be the inverse of that. I feel like it's a little of both in a way.
Because I mean, otherwise in the film, if for instance, Loki and Sylvie blow up all of these things, so she's already created all these timelines. But if there's some battle with the timekeepers and it blows it up even more, and so maybe this is the multiverse of madness that we already know is going to be part of the Doctor Strange show. Once it gets into the cinema, they're going to need to just give too much information in order to establish this is what has happened, because they always want the films to be able to stand on their own in some way.
Well,
they build up, but they have to stand on their own.
They want you to. It's purposely because they want to have that connective tissue to the movies with the Disney Plus shows, and they want you, of course, to subscribe to Disney Plus, so you will kind of learn that backstory. But I think enough people are subscribing to it or hearing about it in the,
well, it's hard to know,
whatever.
Right? We don't know for real.
But I feel like that it ties into the universe, that it gives you, you're good. What I'm trying to say is that Disney is purposely making you, and this is also a business move, but they personally make you get invested in these shows, watch these shows, so they can cover a little bit more material to set up the movies and the big events.
I think absolutely. The people who are watching Disney Plus, 100%, they're going to watch the films. They're going to go to the theaters and pay the money, or they're going to watch them on Disney Plus with the whatever, premium price Disney's going to put on them to watch them on Plus. But I don't think that's true in the reverse. I don't think the people who go to the cinema are going to necessarily invest in the shows and watching them on the Disney platform.
And I think they're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage if they don't watch the Disney Plus shows.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not going to. I think they've got to keep that in mind as they're writing the upcoming films, is that the audience won't all have had the advantage of watching the television shows.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't really build everything in the stories that way unless they're going to explain them. And then are we going to get into a problem with too much exposition or too much flashback or,
Well, one thing that's a little different, and I know it is different, is that, and you touched on this with especially Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., whenever there was a film, they would talk like Civil War or
well, like
something
Dark
happening.
World, after Thor, Dark World.
They would incorporate
the
that
agents
into
went to
their
London
show.
To clean it up.
Right. So, but it didn't work in reverse, and that's because Disney, didn't really consider those shows canon because the fact that Coulson was alive, that was just some kind of, maybe it was I guess we would call it now a branch timeline, right? An alternate timeline. So in that other timeline, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. existed, and maybe all the Netflix shows.
And they alluded to that in the first episode of Loki because they talk about the death of Coulson, but they don't reference the fact that Coulson wasn't really dead, which was the basis of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And that supposed Easter egg that we think was Peggy Carter being escorted in there, was that Peggy Carter from Endgame, because I can't see a way that Steve Rogers going back and not being Captain America and living his life out with Agent Carter.
None of that makes sense in the same timeline. He would have changed.
I feel like he still would have changed. He would have created a branch timeline, and then he would have had to have, I guess, a Pym particle, because that's what they used in there, or an Infinity Stone or something to jump from that branch as older Steve Rogers, over to the end of Endgame. He'd have to jump back into that timeline somehow. He would have had to cross over into that timeline. So
maybe the reason that you can't, because they talk about, the whole idea of like the Back to the Future, don't alter your timeline because you're going to change your future. And, and Dr. Banner and everybody's like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah, the MCU
but maybe the reason it doesn't work that way is like it doesn't matter what you change because you just create this
an alternate timeline.
Universe. So all the timelines exist at once, right?
Right.
That's not new either in science fiction. That's
no, it's not. And so maybe Back to the Future and all these other, like Hot Tub Time Machine and all the ones that they referenced in Endgame, maybe they all exist in like a kind of closed loop kind of time where the MCU is just, it's all timelines, and then here's the sacred timeline, or the prime, what we might call the prime timeline.
Why is this sacred? And why is there a bureaucracy for this sacred timeline? And what does anything mean?
It's been said that King the Conqueror, and I know you don't really know who that is, but he is, well, this is probably big spoilers, but the Fantastic Four is, in the comics, the Fantastic Four had a son, Reed Richardson's Storm, and I forgot his name, but one alternate reality version of him is Kang the Conqueror, and he is what I want to say a Time Lord, but he's not a Time Lord. You know what I mean. Whatever. He's not Doctor Who, but he is basically someone who has bothered the Avengers in the comics through different time periods because he time jumps and he can essentially go to different times, which is kind of what Loki has done, and the variants. But I think possibly maybe Kang is the one that is behind this. Everybody looks at in the church, they think it's I can't say his name. Mephisto, thank you. And that's one of the Easter eggs there in I think the second episode of Loki. But everybody was saying that during WandaVision, and it wasn't, or maybe it was. Maybe we'll find out later on. Because the MCU is good about going back and kind of rewriting history, filling in the blanks there, kind of, retrofitting history to adjust to the timeline. So maybe that says something in itself that, there are just various time streams. I mean, several a multiverse of them, and maybe Doctor Strange is going to have to pull it all together, with Wanda's help and Spider-Man into the not into the Spider-Verse, but the next Spider-Man, No Way Home. The title to me says that there's no way home back to your timeline. So, we're going to see different versions of Batman and all this crazy stuff. Not
Batman, really? Did you just say Batman?
Did I say Batman? I'm
How
thinking of
crazy
the
is
Flash.
this going to be if it's going to have
I
Batman?
just crossed my universes there, but who knows? Maybe we could get some DC. That would be just like really cool. But maybe there's a timeline where mutants already exist, and that's how the X-Men, just come into our timeline. Maybe these timelines merge, kind of like what in DC they had a thing called Crisis on Infinite Earths. They had too many titles going, and they said, okay, let's just bring it down. In the comics, they wanted to simply bring it down to like, a certain one universe with comics. So they basically had, characters. There were so many different versions of Superman and Batman and all these different characters, and
that's still DC.
And that's DC. So this is MCU's version of that.
Well, I mean, Marvel is definitely absolutely anything is possible. But let's talk about this. We know Mobius showed us different Lokis that were extremely different from each other. So from an evolutionary point of view, why are they different? If they all are only one timeline, the sacred timeline, we know there are at least two versions of our Loki, Loki Prime, the one who stays in New York past 2012 and gets killed by Thanos.
And is dead. And they did say in the show, you're dead.
And he's dead. Right.
He watched his reel.
He's not coming back again. And that's the death that the Loki who escapes 2012 and goes to, where was it? Mongolia, and gets taken into
the Gobi Desert.
So but he still exists as the Loki who carries forward and gets killed by Thanos. So these two Lokis are definitely existing at the same time in different places. But then we have these other Lokis who are very different from these two, who are identical except for experience.
Right. Now,
so why are they so different if there was only one sacred timeline? How did Loki, who is Sylvie, emerge from the same timeline as our Loki?
And
I'm thinking of the entirety of our Loki's past. At what point was our Loki the Loki who became Sylvie? That's not possible. The Loki that Mobius showed him, it's not possible for our Loki to have just gone into an alternate timeline and become that Loki. These Lokis are for completely different timelines with completely different evolutions.
And even the way that they show, like if we go back to Avengers in 2012, they use the Tesseract, basically the the Space Stone, to open that portal to space, and then it's like a door you open one end, and and like they said, Dr. Selvig said, yeah, but somebody's coming in from the other side or whatever, and Loki shows up. Now, when Loki used the Tesseract or Time Stone in Endgame, and he shows up in his TV series, and in the Gobi Desert, there's like the little door. It's a different way that we see time. And why did it just, I guess, do you have to plan where you're going, I guess? Or was it just so random? He grabbed the stone and just, teleported away or whatever. But yeah, remember Loki just fell out of the sky into the desert, which was very reminiscent of the scene from Iron Man where Iron Man makes his first suit and flies out of the cave, and then it just falls apart, and he just falls apart in the desert there and all that, and then he gets rescued. But it's weird how the actual use of time is different, or maybe it's just they're updating how time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be, because here's the thing: these Lokis can't exist on the same timeline. So, and they can't exist in branches off of the same timeline because they couldn't have evolved so differently. So maybe there are parallel timelines that when they branch interconnect, and that's how these other Lokis came into contact with the so-called sacred timeline.
Well, what is it, Miss Minutes? Does the little cartoon? I love Miss Minutes. I need to get like a poster of Miss Minutes. But she showed how, you know, all the timelines were at war with each other, and so that I forgot what they're called. The timekeepers. What do they call the time? I want to call them time lords.
I think they're called timekeepers. I don't know.
We'll just call them timekeepers for now. But they were preserving the sacred timeline. But I don't know. I don't know that there is a timeline to preserve. I mean,
just at this point, having watched episode 3, I don't believe they exist.
Yeah.
Something's going on with Judge Renslayer, and we see her confront Loki and Sylvie in the hallway outside of the Golden Doors in this episode before we get to Lamentis. Something's up with her. We could see she was fishy in episode 2. We definitely saw that confirmed in this episode. She is the bad guy, but is she just the agent of the bad guy, or is she somehow the one actually in charge of the TVA and not just representing those in charge of it?
I don't know. That is a good.
That's, you know, we'll find out more next week.
I guess we will. So, I feel I don't think there's much more to say about Loki. I feel like we're gonna, since we had issues getting the stream going.
Well, we're almost running longer talking about Loki than the episode actually ran.
Yeah. Ouch. That's true. Yeah. We've probably already passed the time
more than they actually showed.
So, final thoughts on episode 3 of Loki, Lamentis.
Here's what I like about episode 3. There's still 3 more episodes.
I wish there were
a lot of fun to watch. It was fun seeing the different approaches that Loki and Sylvie have to problem solving.
I know. I wanted to see more
about Sophie DiMartino's acting. I mean, I think she also did an outstanding job in her character. So, you know, very strong. But still missed Owen Wilson. Would have liked to seen him more. And maybe he'll be back as the hero who gets them off Lamentis in the next episode. We'll see how they get off. How do they get off Lamentis? Dun, dun, dun.
My final thoughts on Lamentis, the 3rd episode of Loki, is, well, there was a big reveal, and the internet's got a little bit of buzz that Loki is bisexual or whatever. I don't see where that even matters. You know, why that's even a thing, or if it's a thing or whatever.
Well, I mean, I understand why it matters to people who are in the LGBTQ community, and it is Pride Month, and it's great to have representation. What I don't understand are the people who are upset about it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it does mean something, and it is important. But the people who are upset about it, that's the very reason it means something, because people are still upset over things like this, and they should just realize, embrace that we all have differences.
Right. And I mean, representation is important. I'm just thinking of the character of Loki. It's never been, just because something's never been established about a character doesn't mean you can't add something to a character that makes that character, you know, more interesting. And this would make Loki more interesting of a character. But him being the god of mischief, I kind of feel like this is really no news, because it feels like that might be something that Loki might be into anything, you know, because he's the god of mischief.
Here's what makes a Loki a Loki. Loki's going to do what a Loki's going to do. Right. You know, and both Loki and Sylvie, you know, declare themselves to be hedonists in this episode, and we haven't really seen her do anything. But you know, he gets drunk and ends up giving away, you know, drawing attention to themselves when they're supposed to be keeping their heads down and He's too busy leading the songs and having a good old time. Loki's gonna do what he's gonna do, and Loki always thinks he has a big grand plan, but anything that comes along can take him off that plan, like singing on that train did.
He's easily distracted that way. So it's like Loki has ADHD in a way, but mystically, right, or magically, or whatever. And mischievous as well. Yes.
Yeah, that looks like fun. I'm going to do that now.
It was good to see him use some of his magical powers, and and in between him and I want to call her Sylvia.
Sylvie. But okay, so one other thing about her.
Their interaction, I like. Yes.
Sylvie says one of the things that she does reveal about herself, she says she taught herself how to enchant people.
And Loki
That's a pretty big claim.
Wow, that is
I don't believe her. I don't believe her. Why should she's done nothing to establish trust. Why should I believe her?
I now just naturally trust what she says.
Our Loki is much more willing to trust her than she is to trust him. Right. But then, of course, we can't trust him that he's actually trusting her. Okay. Well, now I've got myself in a loop. And so I'm going to sign off. You can stay and talk about F9. F9, is that what it is? Sounds like a terrible tornado.
That would be the worst kind of tornado.
That would be a really bad tornado.
That would be a really bad tornado.
You enjoyed it.
But I think I'm actually not going to talk about it. I think I'm just going to end it here and just leave it a Loki episode, since we had issues getting this going. So thank you, Cheryl, for joining us. Where are you on Twitter, in case people want to follow you?
Follow me on Twitter at Palace Princess.
And what do you talk about, Palace Princess?
Princesses, real life princesses.
So you're talking about what Megan is wearing and what?
No, I don't talk about what Megan is wearing. When I talk about contemporary royals, I'm usually talking about historic perspective. On my blog, which is Princess Palace, I talk about the historic perspective, or about historic women. I certainly try not to get too involved in the various controversies of the day, which are largely made up.
And where can people find your blog? What's the link?
The web address is HRH Princess Palace at hrhprincesspalace.blogspot.com, or you can just search for Cheryl Susevich Princess, and you will find me.
Yeah, I'm smiling when you said that. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for episode 157, Loki Lamentis. I think Loki was messing with my computer, and so because it wasn't working, and now it's working. So anyway, I'm going to end this, and I'm going to play the outro. You may or may not hear it. I don't know. We're having sound issues. So thank you, Cheryl, and everybody. Goodbye.